And welcome back into the North Star Takes podcast. Our last segment here for today is going to be discussing the Minnesota Timberwolves because we weren't able to get to them last week. Obviously, they've had a really bad season once again, which is disappointing considering they have D'Angelo Russell now, Karl-Anthony Towns, and an emerging star in Anthony Edwards. At least we seem to think.
Yep.
So, I mean, granted, Cat had missed a bunch of time earlier this year. D'Lo missed a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
So it's obviously been a disappointing year. They had to fire Ryan Saunders mid-season.
Yep, never go on the fire your coach.
Exactly. They go and pluck Chris Finch from Toronto. He was their assistant coach to Nick Nurse, who's one of the best coaches in the NBA, widely regarded.
That's incredible mid-season to hire a coach from another team.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. You never see it.
No.
But lately, he's had them playing a lot better since the All-Star break. They've been competitive in pretty much every game. They had won four in a row up until last night, where they lost to who did they play last night?
The Pelicans.
Pelicans.
It's overtime, but yeah, just fizzled out.
Yeah, so they had a good lead in that game, and they kind of blew it at the end. So they've been competitive. Their star players have all been playing well, especially playing well together.
Mm-hmm.
Malik Beasley's been out. It'll be interesting to see how he factors back in. So kind of what are your thoughts with the Timberwolves right now?
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of been a roller coaster year, mostly kind of hanging out at the bottom. We were dead last in the league for the majority of the season until very recently. And yeah, starting off, basically Cat and D'Lo couldn't be on the same page. Like one of them was hurt and out, and one of them was on the floor for the most part. But then just the roles in reverse, and then now we've basically got to the point where we finally, as we've been waiting ever since we acquired D'Lo in that trade with the Warriors, we finally gotten to see what the future looks like here as far as if D'Lo and Cat can bring this team into a playoff spot, and if they really can be franchise cornerstones. And early results, I know they still only played a limited number of games together, which is kind of incredible for how long it feels like D'Lo's been here.
Yeah, right.
But, for the games that they have played together, though, they played pretty well. And like you said, once we've got an Ant in the mix this season after taking number one overall last year, I think it's looking good. Early returns are good. We've been playing pretty, like you said, pretty competitively since the All-Star break. Since Finch probably has been able to get his hands on changing things from what Saunders was doing before. So I can't complain with the effort this team is putting on the court right now, and stringing together wins. I mean, like a couple days ago, they had that 4-game win streak, was the longest active one in the NBA, which you never would have guessed that, like towards the middle of the season,
right?
Like especially after we fired Saunders. So I'm cautiously optimistic about what next season could bring for us. How are you feeling?
Yeah, cautiously optimistic is a good way to put it, because this is the Timberwolves and things always go wrong. But I mean, if these guys can just stay healthy and play together, it seems they finally have a coach that truly knows what he wants to do with this team. He has a vision for the offense.
Just experience in the league.
Exactly. And I think he just wants the defense to be active and give an effort and just be decent enough. You don't have to be an elite defense by any means.
As long as they're not a liability.
Exactly. I mean, you can't be giving up 140 every night, but I mean, you're going to outscore most teams with the offensive talent you have. So
exactly,
that's part of it as well. The big conundrum with them, though, is they've been so bad this year. And fans want them to keep their pick because there's some intriguing draft prospects in this upcoming NBA draft. Yes. But then they go on this 4-game win streak, and then they kind of, I mean, their odds haven't really tanked too much, but they've been up to like the 5th worst team in the NBA. And now after last night's loss, they're down to the 3rd worst team again. So their odds to keep the pick are still at 40%, which is good. Mm-hmm. But what are your thoughts? Do you think it's really necessary for them to keep the pick, or do you think that they're better off just trying to win games now and push and develop towards the future?
Yeah, obviously I'd love to pick at another talented player in here. I know we got the hometown Suggs, but then you also got other guys like Cade Cunningham. He's incredible. And then Evan Mobley could be a dominant big man next to Cat. But I think we got to play for wins. I think we can't be playing for losses when we're trying to build something here, because I feel like we need to establish a somewhat winning culture. At least I know, for what it's worth, at the end of the season, these wins literally mean nothing, but other than confidence and just team morale. But I think it's big that we're starting to like kind of put it together and just gel like this big three, so to speak, with D'Lo and Ant and then Cat, and then you got the supporting cast around them. But I think it's good that we're winning games just to keep people interested in what we're doing here. But I don't know how you feeling about this big three going forward.
I agree with it too, and I look at it from a little bit of a different lens. Obviously, it's great to keep winning games, have these guys build some chemistry together, and hopefully push forward into the future. Mm-hmm. And it seems like all these guys like each other, which is a big deal too, especially in the NBA.
Yes.
And after the whole Jimmy Butler thing we saw a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it though as if we get another top pick, and it has to be top 3, otherwise we lose our pick. If we either are in a position to get Cade Cunningham or Jalen Suggs, it would be awesome because they look like they're going to be elite players in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
But how do they really fit in with this team? There's only one ball, and we know D'Lo loves to shoot. He loves to have the ball in his hand, especially at the end of the game.
Yes, he does.
Anthony Edwards is becoming like that too. I think he takes a lot of shots. He likes to go to the basket, which is what we need.
Yep.
But he also likes to chuck up some threes. So I mean, he's only 19. He's got some learning to do, and he's a really good player, honestly.
Yeah.
And then you got Cat too, who's honestly our best shooter. He shoots the best percentage from 3, and he takes the least amount of shots of any of those 3 guys. And really, it should be completely reversed. I mean, with how efficient Cat is, he should be shooting like crazy.
Yeah.
But so I mean, if you add a Cade Cunningham into that mix, and he's used to being the guy at Oklahoma State and being the ball dominant point guard, and
exactly,
I don't know how that would work with like a D'Lo. And, maybe the issue would be D'Lo and not Cade Cunningham. But it's just, you kind of have to look at it like that. Now, maybe if they get the 3rd pick, they're able to get Evan Mobley from USC, who's a center.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can kind of have him and Cat playing together. Or maybe he can even come off the bench to start. Who knows? Because Jaden McDaniels has been playing great at. But, I mean, he's kind of a power forward or maybe even a small forward. It'll be interesting to see what their plan is for him in the future. But I think this team's got some good, solid young players to build on. And now it's just about, can you sign a couple guys in free agency? Can you maybe make a trade that can get a good, solid veteran presence in here off the bench?
Mm-hmm.
A guy that can actually contribute and not just bring in as, a waste of space, basically, as just a locker room guy who doesn't play. So
yeah. Finding guys to round out the roster for next season would be huge for us. And I think we got a nice nucleus here, it feels like, with, like you mentioned, D'Lo, Ant, and Cat. And if we do manage to, so to speak, win the lottery and end up in the top 3 and keep our pick, I think that it will be an interesting dynamic to bring in a guy, honestly, any of those 3 guys, because I think they're all kind of alphas. And then it feels like we already got Ant, who's an alpha. I mean, how many guys can we really put on the floor all at once? So, and it still works. So I guess we'll just see what happens. I mean, just root for wins and let the chips fall where they may. But I think we got a nice big 3, and with or without that pick, I think we'll be fine next year. Like you said, I think it'll be more about adding veteran pieces in the offseason, whether that be via trade or maybe free agency, just bring stabilizing forces to this really young squad that's really learning how to win in this league. So I'd really like to, like you said, do that and then maybe really push for a playoff spot next year in this tough Western Conference. But I think we could do it looking at the teams that are slightly above us all the way up to that about eighth spot. So.
Right. Yeah, I think, like you said, there's not, obviously record-wise there is quite a gap right now just because, we've had such a horrible season. But talent-wise, there really isn't that big of a gap. And I think if we can just finally put it all together, we can get there. Exactly. And so I think my maybe preferred turnout of this draft lottery and the draft would be getting the 3rd pick, and that way we basically have to take Evan Mobley. Yeah. We don't have that temptation of taking the point guard, which, I mean, they're probably going to be really good players, let's face it. But what the Wolves really need is a power forward or a center, especially someone that can play next to Cat, especially if Jaden McDaniels is viewed as a small forward, going forward. So
exactly.
I think the preferred outcome for me would be getting Evan Mobley, and then you play him next to Cat, and maybe even Cat plays as the power forward. Who knows? So I think that could open up a lot of things for them.
For sure, yeah, and I guess building off that, regardless of what happens in the lottery, whether we keep our pick or not, give one of those top 3 players or not, I was kind of thinking about this as we're diving into really the makeup of this roster. How do you figure Malik Beasley fits into this team going forward? Is he a starter? Is he going to be a 6-man? What do you think's best for him?
That is interesting because we traded for him from Denver last year when we completely flipped the whole team. I mean, basically only Cat and Okogie stayed. Yep. So he was a bench player in Denver. He came here and he was instantly a starter because we kind of needed him to be. We didn't have a shooting guard. Yep. And he's been a starter ever since. And honestly, before he got injured this year, he was pretty much our best player. I mean,
Oh yeah,
he was shooting the ball well.
he's playing like a legit all-star.
Yeah, he was averaging over 20 points a game. He, shooting well. He can also cut to the basket. He doesn't do a whole lot in terms of like rebounding or passing, which is fine.
That's fine. Yeah.
Because especially with this roster, with having our big three, really, I think you just need a guy that's a spot-up shooter.
Exactly.
Can run to the corner, you pass him the ball, and he shoots right away.
Exactly.
So, and he's a floor spacer as well. So I think overall, I don't know. It kind of depends like what they do, though. If they get a power forward, he's probably going to have to move to the bench and be the sixth man, which I don't know if he'd have an issue with it. He doesn't really have the clout to be upset about that. But at the same time, you're not going to bench like a D'Lo or an Ant. And, McDaniels, like we said, is probably a 3. Mm-hmm. He's athletic. He can shoot. He can defend really well, which they need in their starting lineup. So I would love having Beasley as a sixth man, though. I think
he'd be a sixth man of the year.
Yeah, I think he definitely has that potential. I don't see what could stop him from that. He's still young. He's only 23, 24 years old, I think. So
exactly.
I think the sky's the limit for him, especially if he's the sixth man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think with Beasley, too, I don't think you can ever have enough three-point shooting on your team in this day and age in the NBA. So Beasley's huge for that. I think besides Cat, I'd probably say he's probably our best pure three-point shooter, if I'm being honest. I mean, D'Lo obviously has his games and he can get really hot, but I think as far as consistently, I think I'd probably lean towards Beasley. But
I would agree.
So are you basically saying, like, regardless of who we end up with in the draft, though, let's say we get Cunningham or Suggs, both guards, obviously then Beasley would be like kind of phased out of the mix, going to the bench. But then even if we end up with Mobley or something, and he goes to the bench just because of McDaniels playing probably the 3 and then having Mobley and Cat start at the 4 and 5.
Exactly. I think that's the way it would be. And I think the only way he would stay in the starting lineup is if we don't end up getting a draft pick. Because I don't think we'll be able to add a guy that could be a starter in the offseason. So I think you would have Beasley starting at the 2, obviously D'Lo at the 1.
Yep.
Then you have Ant at the 3, McDaniels at the 4, and then Cat at the 5. But if they're able to add anyone else in the draft, one of the 2 guards would slide into the 2 or the 1, and D'Lo would be the 2.
Yep.
And then either that or then Mobley would slide into like the 4. And you'd have to move somebody out, and I think it would be Beasley just because I think they'd want McDaniels' defense in there.
Yeah.
So either way, I think it's fine because, like I said, he's not a ball hog type dude where he's going to be dribbling the air out of the ball for 15 seconds and then hoist up a stupid shot. So I don't know. I think he can work with the starting lineup. I think he can work with the bench and provide a scoring punch. So I think they have a good player here. It was a good find in that trade that they just so happened to get after shipping out basically the entire roster.
Yeah, for real.
So yeah, I like Malik Beasley and I like our big 3 and the way things are looking right now.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. And I actually thought another thing about this roster. And let's go down this road where we get a top 3 pick and we land one of those top 2 guards, Cunningham or Suggs.
Okay.
Now you think about how many guards we have on our team. Does that mean the odd man out could possibly be Ricky Rubio? Do you think putting you on the spot here? But do you think Ricky's gone this offseason if, let's say, we're getting Suggs or Cunningham to add to, like, Ant and D'Lo and everybody else who can kind of ball handle for us?
Yeah, I think he would have to be. And I think with Ricky, it's tough because I think all the players love him. Like, you can see D'Lo and Ant and Cat, they all really get along with him. Mm-hmm. The problem is Ricky plays a lot of minutes, and he hasn't been playing that well this year. I mean, he's not a good shooter. He's had some uncharacteristically bad turnovers this year, which you usually don't see from him. Usually he's making the flashy pass. And some of that could be like the teammates' fault as well. We have a very inexperienced roster. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not the biggest Ricky fan in the world, but I can see a scenario where he's here next year, but I can see a different scenario where he's not here. And I think if we added like a Cade Cunningham or Jalen Suggs, I do think he'd be gone. Just because I'm guessing they'd maybe try the 2-guard thing, but then they'd also have, off the bench, they would have Malik Beasley, and then maybe like even a Jalen Noel I see them keeping around, and he's got point guard experience. So, yeah, I think the only way Ricky stays is if we don't add anybody, and then they're not big fans of Jalen Noel or Jordan McLaughlin being the point off the bench.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of feel like, J-Max almost, I feel like he's kind of in the back of my mind, I guess. Now I grab on him too. Yeah, we got a lot of guards at play here.
Yeah,
so
we do.
I'm interested to see how that situation shakes out this offseason. Now, let me put you on the spot again here. Let's
boy.
move. Speaking of next season with
Yeah.
Ricky and being on the roster, let's talk about the Wolves' outlook. I mean, if you were right now before the 2020-2021 season even ends here, what do you think are realistic expectations for the team next season? I mean, this is very tentative.
Yep.
We don't know what they're doing this offseason. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you mentioned the offseason, you want to target a vet and probably just really round out this roster. But before we even do that, let's say what's the outlook looking like next season? What kind of bar are you setting for this team?
Assuming that these guys can stay healthy, and assuming this is what I've been harping on as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know this last offseason there was a worldwide pandemic, and there still will be one during this offseason too. But
Yep.
these players have been vaccinated, and they've played a full season now during it.
Mm-hmm.
They need everyone. They don't have to be here the whole time, but they need the whole team to be here when they're having their summer workouts
Yeah.
and when camp opens up right away. They need
Team chemistry.
They need the camaraderie,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to learn how to play with each other because with Cat and D'Lo being out so much of this season, they really haven't gotten that chance to build that chemistry. Oh. And so while the end of the season is looking promising, and they're winning some games finally, and they're being competitive in pretty much every game,
Yeah.
I still think they need a good off season where maybe they do some team building stuff like they did a couple of years ago. They went to the Bahamas or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have to do that, obviously. But
Oh, come on.
gotta
go to Bahamas.
yeah, go out on Lake Minnetonka and visit PJ Fleck. And, So I don't know. They just need to
need that culture.
Exactly. Maybe he'll talk to them about what it takes to be a team and to win, and I don't know. Maybe he'll give them a pump up speech.
Got to row together.
Exactly. They'll be rowing out on Lake Minnetonka. So I don't know. I think, they just need a solid offseason together, and then, like I said, just stay healthy next season. And there's no reason that they shouldn't be competing for a playoff spot.
100%.
I don't know if the NBA is going to be keeping that play-in tournament that they're doing this year, where the 7 through 10 seeds kind of do like a little play-in tournament before the playoffs start. So if that's the case, then there's no excuse for not being a top 10 seed next year.
No.
But if they're back to normal and they're just doing the 8 seeds, I think they should definitely be competing for that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because when you look at just eyeballing it, I guess, looking at the teams that are kind of hovering around that 8 spot in the West this year, like just purely on paper, the talent we have, I feel like we shouldn't be any worse than them. I feel like we should be right up there with them. Assuming everybody's healthy for the majority of the season and we don't have anything unexpected happen. And obviously with the Wolves, that's more likely than not, which sucks, at least these days. But like you said, I think that's pretty realistic to expect competing for a playoff spot next year, regardless of if they're like taking the top 10 teams or not in the conference or going back to the traditional 8. So
right. Yeah, so the Timberwolves, they're giving us something to talk about at least here at the end of the season, and they're giving us a little bit of promise at least. So
talk of the town.
So we'll probably get into them more later on as well, especially as the offseason arrives and we get the NBA draft lottery, and we'll kind of see how they finish out these last handful of games as well.
Can't wait.
That'll do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos on YouTube, and as well as follow our Instagram page. So we'll keep you posted, and we'll see you next time.